And I'm also about to send you most of the references that you may need to look at for this. I guess we have enough people now. So first of all, let me say hello to everyone. My name is Nhung and I teachers, in-service teachers or future teachers that you may want to become. So have a quick look at the syllabus and then I'll explain the course that we all have to follow so as we can pass the course properly. What we need to cover, whatever it is in this very first section. Anyway, let me know if you cannot hear me properly. I'll raise my voice, but very often people have okay. Hopefully, you have had some time to look at the syllabus. And as some of you have just joined us, let me say hello again. And I'll first of all, will walk you through the major contents of the syllabus that you have in your hand. Probably you have in your computer or whatever you have. And later on, if you have any questions, just let me know. So this is my information and my contact details. You have any questions, you are encouraged to ask me during the section that we have with each other. But if for any reasons you cannot really ask the question, then you are more than welcome to email me. And this is my email. I respond to my students' email within 24 hours. So if you email me, definitely you will get replied. This is the course objectives. I make it actually clearer than what you see in the syllabus. So hopefully in this course, you will be able to cover, to master or understand key concepts in intercultural communication and become more aware of the values of our host or our home culture. We will also develop our understanding of how different cultures may be different in the way they are manifested and how those differences can be influential to the way we ourselves as non-native speakers of English communicate, and how, again, those differences may influence the way our students communicate in English. And hopefully, because we also help you understand the significance or the importance of developing something that we call intercultural communication competence. Sometimes it is referred to as intercultural communicative competence for language learners that we are teaching. We will also look at a number of techniques and activities for integrating cultural contents as well as of developing ICC for our learners. This course is not about methodology because you have a complete course, separate course on methodology itself. But within this course, it will try to create the connection between intercultural communication and the significance of intercommunication and the importance of developing intercultural communication competence for language learners. And it reminds you of how and why it's significant to integrate all of these aspects related to intercultural communication competence for young learners and learners of all age groups, actually. Now, here is the information about assessment components. I actually made an effort to modify the assessment requirements to make it relevant to the way that we are now delivering this course. In the past, I used to deliver this course in person, which I enjoyed more than delivering entirely online. But when we have to do it online or virtually, the way that we are doing now, I try to make it and I try to modify the assessment components to make it more suitable and to also save time. And it also allows me to assess whether you really understand what is covered and what we discussed in this course. This course is actually not long. It's like 2 credits. So probably I'll see you, we'll have totally like 6 sections or so, and we will reserve a section for questions or consultation if it is necessary. Okay, the first assessed component will be attendance and participation. that actually accounts for 40%. I'll have access to your name list and I'll try to assess. This is very much relative in terms of accuracy, but I'll try to see how often you attend. And virtually attendance also requires active participation in discussion, not just like you try it online on your mobile phone or on your computer and leave it showing being online without any participation in learning activities. So I'll reserve the right to check your presentation by looking at the indication here to see whether you are virtually online and you are mentally online, taking part in different tasks that we are about to complete during the sections that I have with you. For group presentation, this will be screen recording because this is a very large class with many students, and it would be easier for me if I allowed you or if I asked you to make your presentation online and everyone can observe, but actually it takes a lot of time. So the way I do this is I want you to work to form groups of 6 or 5 students. Do not maximize the number of the member numbers of your group. So each group cannot exceed 6 people. Minimum is 5 and maximum is 6. If you need like less than 5 or more than 6, you need my official approval. Other than that, please stick with 5 or 6. And then choose any topic relevant to intercultural communication. It can be in any materials that I'm going to send you, or you can get hold of during the course, or we are about to cover in this course. As long as it's relevant to intercultural communication, then it's okay. And prepare a presentation within 25-30 minutes. During your presentation, it covers at least relevant literature, including relevant theories and a review of suitable substantial research. Also in your presentation about that particular topic, I would like to see how you explain and illustrate the concepts or the topic that you are talking about. To make it more explicit, to make it more comprehensible to the general audience, okay? Also included in this presentation is a set of implications or suggestions for teaching English as a foreign language. So from what you have come across and you synthesize and you combine and you presented, what are some of the suggestions relevant to what you have just presented that can be applied to the teaching of English as a foreign language to promote intercultural or to help your students to develop the ability to communicate in cross-cultural contexts. In other words, the implications for teaching for developing intercultural communication competence for your students. Also in this presentation, I need you to integrate maybe 1 or 2 tasks or activities, which should be simple. Can be a quiz, it can be a couple of questions to engage the audience. You cannot just talk from the beginning to the end if you want to make your presentation interesting and engaging to the audience. But there's one thing that you need to remember. When you integrate tasks or activities into an online presentation where you do not have access at the same time of delivering the presentation to the audience, then make sure that you save enough time. And that waiting time should also be included within the time allowance of 25 and 30 minutes. Criteria that I use to assess your presentation also include language use, how you use the language, like fluency and accuracy for your presentation or for general audience to understand what you are talking about. And please make sure that every member of the group must take part in the presentation, and you all should have relatively equal contribution to your group presentation. So because every group will have the same grade or will have the same mark, make sure that you do some rehearsal and make sure that you contribute to your group presentation so that your performance will not negatively influence other members of your group. And please choose your group members wisely so that you don't have to cover the work of other people. Okay. And make screen recording. I'll send you sample. You can actually do it with any computer. So the screens keep showing up, and then we have a corner where you see the face of the presenter at one time in any corner of the presentation of the slide. And then you send it all to, you share it all to a Google Drive link and get that link to me as a group, as the whole class package, not one by one, okay? And name your file with group number. And then together with your package, I need all of you to come up with a list of all groups, and each group will have all members' full name together with one contact point, like your email. So if your group has like 5 members, I only need one email. Because after my assessment, I'll send email to that email, and that student will circulate or forward my email to all other group members so that you know my feedback on your presentation against the criteria that I just told you and the grade that you will get for your presentation. Have any questions? By now? Hello? You have any questions about the syllabus? Let me know. If you have any comment. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the assessment is actually much simpler than the original version. And you will see it much simpler than a lot of courses that you have done by now. And I hope you will spend enough time and effort to make it as good as you can. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free to ask me. Otherwise, we'll go directly with everything that we got to cover in this. Could you send us the recording of the class? I think it's recording at the moment. Yeah, I may do it. And actually, some of you already asked for my approval to record the section yourselves, and I've already granted permission for you to do it. Okay, so again, and later on, I'll also tell you the time, that the dates in the week that we will have section on. For the moment, we will have tonight, tomorrow night. Tonight is Tuesday, and we'll have it on Wednesday and also Thursday. After Thursday, I'll let you know next time we'll have the section, probably sometime in Saturday. But I'll let you know on Thursday, probably. Okay. Okay, so we'll get started. It's a bit unusual here, but again, it's really a pleasure to deliver this course to you. Intercultural communication is something that I'm very much interested in. I did my PhD in Australia in intercultural communication, and I'm communication for so long. You may find in some of the references, some of the publications that I come up with during the years of teaching intercultural communication. And I've also had quite many opportunities to be in Cantor City, but on the I'm just too busy to be there in person. So I'm happy to deliver it online. Now, in this very first section, we'll look at some of the key concepts in intercultural communication. Because before we go anywhere further, we have the same or consensus understanding of what these key concepts are. You will not really see a lot of explanations or a lot of words. It will mainly involve discussion and sharing to see how different people can actually understand these key concepts. And maybe some of you have already done a number of courses with me, like methodology in language teaching in TESOL. Now, in methodology, we have already covered, if you have already learned it before, we've already covered something called intercultural communication language teaching. Some of the materials would be very similar, but the way we explore these materials would be different in this course. You may see some, not much, but some repetition, but the way we relate the same materials to language teaching would be not the same as the way we relate to these substances and materials in the course on methodology. Now, without further ado, we will look at some of the key concepts. Before we look at the key concept, I would like you to ask yourself some of these questions. What are some examples of cultures? Or what are some expressions of a culture? In other words, when someone says culture, what shows in your mind? What do you think of? What do you associate culture with? Okay, so I guess you have 5 or 7 minutes for this question, and then try to break it down, see if you can come up with some group here. So you work in groups and then we'll come up after 7 minutes. See what you think of some of the examples of culture. So okay, so I suppose now you know who you are working with. You don't have to text me just yet. You just need to work in your group. Try to give some examples or illustrations or manifestations of culture. So basically, when someone mentions the word culture, what do you think of? Oh, what's going on? Okay, we'll be about to stop our discussion. I've seen some of you actually send along your response here in the text box. So, what are some examples of a culture? It seems yeah, Kim Ngân, please.
Yes, teacher. I think one of the typical example of culture to grab food to eat.
Yeah, that's nice observation. Yeah, so the way people can be, that's Kim Ngân, can be one area that where we can see aspect of culture. Yes. Thank you. And anybody else? Bạn Toan, bạn Nhật Hao, Gửi Ánh, Diệm Thủy. Can you just share what you've been writing down? Ngọc Phước, please. Yeah, Ngọc Phước. You hear me properly? Kian?
Because my friend already shared about the table etiquette, so I want to share about the Vietnamese eating manner. Usually, as I observe, people don't dare to pick the first piece on the plate when it is served on the table. And also for the last piece, people don't dare to pick too. I don't dare to pick either. They don't want to be the first person pick the first piece in the plate and don't want to be the last person pick the last piece. That it is, I think it is the Vietnamese cultures, the like eating etiquette.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So it's not just the way we eat, but probably the ritual.
Yeah.
The unwritten rules that we are expected to follow. Like people can be hesitant in food, like being the first person to get the food. Yeah, probably, but it also depends on the relationship between you and the person that you are having meals with.
Yeah.
And it also depends on the context, does it? Yeah, thank you. And Nhật Hao, please, you want to answer, share something?
As I have just wrote and sent to you and everyone, culture is something related to a set of something that people in a group share. So in Vietnam, it can be explained with the festival and celebrations. For example, Tết Nguyên Đán, or usually in English we have the Lunar New Year. It is the most important holiday in the Vietnam, celebrating the arrival of springs based on the lunar calendar. It is the time for family reunions and to honor the ancestor. Another example would be the Tết Trung Thu Mid-Autumn Festival. This is some kind of festival celebrates the harvest and is especially popular with the children, and is characterizes lantern, lion dances, and moon cakes. Yes, that's exactly it. I want to share.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Hal. Probably it's the one of the most obvious aspect in culture when it comes to culture, when it comes to traditions and like national holidays, the way we celebrate our traditions and we practice our customs. Yeah, like you mentioned New Year vacations or New Year holidays. And all of the ceremonies and the rituals that we follow, yeah. So it varies greatly from the way we eat to the way we worship our ancestors to the way that we celebrate our holidays and reserve our traditions and customs. Yeah, definitely. What else can we see, or what else can we really associate culture with, apart from cuisine, from eating, from table manner, from eating etiquette, from traditions and customs? Is that everything? Yeah, Thuy Liang, please.
Yeah, I think language can be considered as an example of culture. For example, some ethnic groups in Vietnam, they have their own language to communicate with their group.
Okay, so what you are saying is when different groups of people have different languages, language is an aspect of culture. Is that what you are saying?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll actually talk more about this later on in this course to see further and more clearly the complicated relationship between language and culture. Definitely they are associated, how they can be influential to each other, and what is the real relationship between these two concepts and these two entities and phenomena will be further discussed. Thank you, Thuy Liang. Kim Anh, please.
Beside the things that our friends has mentioned, such as the languages, the beliefs, the attitudes, I believe that maybe the different cultures can be dissimilar in the way that people use the art, the music, or things like that. For example, when I hear something strange, it is not some familiar language for me. For example, it is not Vietnamese, but it is not English, but I maybe somehow on the way that they use their language, on the ways they use their music, I can guess somehow their culture. So I believe for like art or music is another aspect of culture.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, Kim Anh. So it can be, it sometimes it can be something physical, something that we can touch, that we can see, but sometimes it can be something more of the mental, emotional, spiritual. Like you mentioned, like music, like songs, like history, and a series of events in the history. They are all associated with culture. Yeah, definitely. So again, it can be tangible, it can be intangible, it can be something very much that we can describe in physical terms with measurements, or in rituals, in the order of communication and the way that we are expected to communicate. But it can be more sophisticated, like the spiritual, the emotional, mental values that we inherit from generation to generation, that previous generation passed down on the next generations. Something which is harder to get hold of, harder to describe, something that we can actually feel. Yeah, like definitely like music. Yes. Thank you. And we have somebody else here. Hồng Ngọc, please.
Yes. Another thing that I believe is somehow could be related to the aspects of culture is like the architecture. Like we can clearly see it between like the temple in our Eastern culture and the churches in the Western culture, and even like the architecture between those churches in the Western world also different too. Like if we see the churches from the Spain influenced culture, then usually it's gonna have like a pointy top on those roof. But like if we look at the churches that comes from, for example, the French influence, then we could see that usually the top of those churches is gonna be a little bit more like slide out to the sides, flat out to the sides, and usually more colorful in the French influence culture too. So that's the one thing that I think that may be related to culture is the architecture.
Okay, now thank you for sharing what you think. Yeah, so again, apparently architecture is one of the aspects that we often look at when we think about culture, even though it is not as obvious as other aspects like traditions and customs, things that we get exposed to more often in our real life. Architecture apparently is an area that we can look at when we think about culture. And we see not just different cultures may have different orientations toward architecture, but also at different points of time or different periods in the history of the same culture, they may share very different perspectives on culture themselves. Okay, and I would like to invite one more participant to share your thought on this before we go further to more key concepts fundamental to intercultural communication. Bạn Ngọc Phượng, please.
Yes, teachers, I'm here. So sorry, teachers, because I have a problem with my microphone. So that's why you couldn't hear me really clearly. All right. So now I'll just come up with another culture language. Yes. You know, people from different cultural backgrounds may use language. The way they communicate with the others is quite different, right? So I'm gonna pick up some example. I mean, the way that people say hello can vary greatly across different cultures and languages. Some example, in Vietnam we say xin chào, right? But in English people say hello, hi, hey. In Spanish people say hello, sorry, hola. In French people say bonjour, salut. In Japanese people say konnichiwa. Yes. And some other example. Yeah, we see that language is also significant point to show the differences of cultures among various countries. Yes, that's what I want to share.
Okay, thank you so much for very interesting observation. Again, language is an inherent part associated with culture. But we got to be careful when we provide some examples on how people in different cultures use language, and we got to be careful when we make claims like different probably nations or different communities use different language, meaning that they have different cultures. Now, the way French people say ça va, and English people say, let's say, how are you? Vietnamese people say, dạ anh có khỏe không, hay là chị có khỏe không? They are not completely associated with culture. The way English people say, how are you? And the way Vietnamese people say, anh đi đâu ạ? Hay là chị đi đâu ạ? Chị ăn cơm chưa? Instead of saying hello, that is culture. Okay, so the fact that we use different languages does not automatically mean that our cultures are different. The fact that we use language slightly differently, like even though we may serve the same function, like saying hello or greeting, Vietnamese people may say, have you eaten yet? Meaning hello. Why native speakers of English say, very often say, how are you? That's culture. Okay. And later on, we'll have further sections to understand, again, as I said, the relationship between culture and language, and how our understandings of cultural differences may help us overcome misunderstandings and communication breakdowns when we enter intercultural communication context. But it's great that you pointed out some very interesting examples from your own experiences and observations. I hope that we'll have more to share very soon. Now, we need to catch up with what we have to cover in this course. There are, unluckily and also luckily, a lot of concepts here, and we need to actually understand them all properly if we want to go anywhere further in this very short course. Okay, have a quick look at these concepts. We need to understand them all correctly, so that we can have similar or same shared understandings. Because during this course, I'm about to mention this again and again very often. Now, have a quick look at these concepts and see how many of these are familiar to you. How many of these you feel confident to probably define or explain or provide examples for. And again, as I said, you are not going to see complete the only and the correct explanations for all of these courses or definitions for all of these concepts, but we will have to share same or similar understandings for these all. Okay, so again, for this time, I want you to, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, totally 8 key concepts here. We got maybe some more times to actually explore what they are. I'll send along here the key concepts that you can find in the chat box. Make sure everyone gets the list properly. And now not started. Oh, still working out. You got probably 15 minutes for your discussion, so make sure you have good time balance for different concepts that you got to discuss.
Hello mọi người có nghe em nói không ạ? Hello.
những cái group khác đó mọi người ơi.
Hello,
Chị Phước ơi, chị Nhung.
hello, cưng có nghe chị không? Không tính biết chị bị cái gì, có khi nghe được cái gì không? Hello.
So you wanna can you explain a little bit about
You have 2 more minutes and then we'll come back here together. Okay. I hope you had some time to look at some of the key concepts. More of you are joining us. Okay, we are in. So if you want to talk on behalf of your group, you can. If you want to talk for yourself, you are also welcome. Okay. So if you start first, you can start with any concept that you feel most comfortable with. But I strongly recommend that if you say first, each time or each of you would touch only on one particular concept so that we can save time and opportunity for later speakers and later concepts. If you totally agree with what has been said on a particular concept, please do not repeat it. But if you want to provide or you want to share something else to be complementary to what has been shared, then you can have a say. Okay. I would like to invite first of all bạn Quốc Tổng, please.
So, hello, teacher. I would like to share about the first concept, which is culture and subculture. Like we have been talking a lot about cultures, and I think that everyone has a clear understanding of culture. So I'm going to give an example of subculture. So I think that subcultures can be referred to the cultures that a smaller groups share with each other. For example, Vietnamese culture is different from Japanese culture, and then we call them cultures. But then within the Vietnam country, there will be smaller groups of people, such as the ethnic groups. We have the Hmong people, we have the Kinh people, and Khmer people, for example. And each ethnic group, they share different cultures, such as wearing different traditional dresses, or they may have different customs. But all of the three peoples are part of a larger Vietnamese culture. So that's what we call subculture.
Okay, yeah. So thank you on sharing for sharing that perspective on subculture. Well, I believe it's very much relevant to the cause and to what people often think about subculture. Yeah, thank you. Now I'd like to invite bạn Bò Lê Văn Thảo now.
Teacher, I would like to share some of my ideas about the group culture. And group culture, I think, is a smaller group of people share the same practices or beliefs and maintain within that smaller group. For example, in a workplace, for example, in a particular department, people share the same behaviors like greeting each other with a smile or with some gestures between entering the room. Or maybe in some kindergartens, teachers tend to choose a particular way of greeting the children before entering the class, and this can be also considered as a group culture. And that's on my idea.
Okay, thank you, Thảo. And yeah, you've already provided some examples and explanations on subculture. We'll come back to this concept very soon. Thank you. Bạn Dương Lê nào, please. Bạn Lê nào.
Yeah, I am Lê Đình Chu.
Okay. I'll get hold of the name list from Công Ngân. Yeah, bạn Dương, please.
Can I share the stereotype, the number 6? Okay. The stereotype is a fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or things. It often arises from limited exposure to different cultures and can lead to the discrimination. For example, the stereotype of that all Americans are loud, all Chinese are loud, and all French people are romantic. Yeah, that's my sharing.
Yeah, so stereotype is like simplifying probably a group of people or some features of a culture into particular characteristics.
Yeah, but it's not a wide view. It's just a very narrow view on those.
So it may be correct, it may be not, and we got to be careful, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Jim. Bạn Minh Thứ, I would appreciate it if you can name your virtual can actually name yourself virtually in the order of your full name so that I know who you are quickly and so that I can address you properly. Okay. Minh Thư, please.
Hello, teacher, and I would like to share about cultural shock. For me, cultural shock is the feeling of discomfort on disorientation when people move to another country or different cultural environment. For example, Vietnamese students come to study in America will experience cultural shock at the beginning. And about the W-shaped code, it means it is a model that describes the stages that of the cultural shock, including enlightenment, pieces, recovery, and eventual adjustment, followed by a second round of and doubts when returning home. And that's what I learned from the internet. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing what you learned from the internet. Which is very honest. But again, we will actually look at what you've just presented, what you've just shared more properly. But yes, by exploring different sources online, we have very first initial perceptions or impression of the concepts that we are about to cover and discovered in this course. Now I would like to invite one more person, Bằng Huân Như, please.
Yes. I says my opinions about good culture. When it comes to the good culture, I think it refers to the set of some features of cultures that a group of people shared, like aspects of life that includes or consists of everything in their life, and I think it's invisible and is the process of the terrorist culture or the culture of this group of people. And these features of the cultures like values, norms, practice, or something like their opinions or viewpoints. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Huân Như. Do all of you agree with what she just said? Or you want to provide some more explanations? Again, we'll see quickly whether what has been said is relevant or not. One last person. This time I would like you to focus on intercultural communication if you can't, or any concept which has not been touched on yet.
I want to share about the intercultural communication and cross-cultural communication. I think that international cultural communication refers for the interaction between the individuals from different cultures, while cross-cultural communication refers for the comparison among different cultures. For example, like the Vietnamese people and Japanese people, they talk together in English. So they have different cultural background. So at that time, they interact together. This is international
intercultural communication. But when we compare the differences like the style or the norm or our belief when we communicate, this is cross-cultural communication. Yeah, this is my opinion.
Yeah, that's very close to the perspective that we are about to look at now. I think that has actually given you enough time to actually look at the key concept. And we are now have a quick look at them all. See. Admit. I'm going to walk you through some of these key concepts, and we will always spend a few minutes looking at specific definition of one or two concepts. Other than that, we will explain together what they are rather than throwing into you the definition by itself. So culture can be actually anything. Can be things that we eat, the way that we eat. Can be clothing, the way we dress, the way we talk, even the we move. Having said that, what I'm saying is culture can be something tangible. It can be observed by with our eyes, with our ears, but sometimes it can only be felt by our own experience, by something that we call the country heart, rather than something physical or tangible that we can touch or we can see. Culture can be associated with language, but it can also be nonverbal, our gesture. This is why we are about to have a complete section on nonverbal and verbal communication in culture. So basically, in a broad term, culture is an umbrella term covering many aspects associated with our life, as you have already mentioned. The way that we eat, like cuisine, it can be something much bigger, passing down from generation to generation, like traditions or customs or rituals, heritage. It can be even something more complicated and more sophisticated, like architecture, like religions, can be values, can be beliefs, the way that we communicate, the rituals that we followed. It can also be the expectations that we had to live by. So culture can be basically anything associated with particular groups of people or community. If you read more about culture, you can see people tend to distinguish something called big C culture and small C culture. They are not much different. They are only different in terms of the level of specifications. Can be, the other one can be more specific and a little bit easier to describe. And on the other side, the big C can be broader term and covering a wider range of entities and things. Subculture, definitely if it is sub, it is considered as being smaller. So we tend to For example, within Vietnam culture or Vietnamese culture, we can say culture of the South culture or the North culture. From my own experience, I find it easier to talk to or to communicate with people coming from the South, because I feel like it's easier to understand what they think. For people from the North, sometimes it's hard to really get hold of what they really think, because a lot of times I feel like what they are saying is not exactly the same as what they may think. This can be something called stereotype, but I feel that many times. And different subcultures within the same boundary, within the same territory, like a country or the nation, may still share a lot of common values, common things, but they have their own differences in many aspects of life. Okay. Group culture is again something much smaller than subculture, and it's often associated with a particular occupation or career, or an area of practice, like student culture or medicine culture or even doctor culture, or showbiz culture. So the features, the cultural features of group culture are again closely connected with their profession, with the career, with specific theme or topic relevant to that particular group culture. Okay. And we see a lot of these group cultures in our real life. In the cultural context, inter means between, and intercultural context refers to very much physical context, including the setting, time, the location, relationship of people who are immediately engaged in that communication, of people who come from different cultures, because inter means between. So we have intermarriage, marriage of people who come from different cultures, internation or international, between nation, internet, the net or the channel or the system that connects different cultures, different nations. So inter means between in terms of what we call morphology, meaning of the prefix inter. So again, intercontext is context or situations, mainly referring to physical context, in which people who come from different cultures using the same language to communicate. So Vietnamese people and American people use English or Vietnamese, or even French if both sides know French, to communicate. In all of those contexts, we call them intercultural context. Host context or host culture refers to the culture that hosts us. Like if we are about to visit Singapore, or if we are about to visit New Zealand and Singapore become our host culture. The culture that hosts us, guest culture is the culture of the person with whom we are communicating. So if we are talking to, let's say, a British person, then British or Britain will become our guest culture. The home culture of the guest is called guest culture. Now, intercultural communication is slightly different from cross-cultural communication. In a lot of research and literature, like books and articles on intercultural communication, you may see sometimes intercultural communication and cross-cultural communication are used interchangeably. But in fact, they are not exactly the same. Intercultural communication often refers to the study of communication of people who come from different culture using the same language. For example, how Vietnamese people greet or say hello to each other in English with American people, that would be called study in intercultural communication. Cross-cultural communication, as one of you has mentioned before, looks at and compares, looks at how Vietnamese people say hello in Vietnamese and how American people say hello in English, and compare and sometimes contrast similarities and differences among people using different languages to make the same speech acts. Probably you've learned pragmatics, so you know speech acts, the acts that can be performed by using language, like greeting or apologizing or promising. So again, if we look at these two concepts more closely, then intercultural communication and cross-cultural communication are very similar, but they do not look at exactly the same areas. Cross-cultural communication more focus more on comparison, how people in different cultures using different languages to communicate, especially to make the same speech act. Intercultural communication looks at context where people who come from different cultures using the same language to communicate, to see how their home cultures may influence on their communication, even when they use same language to communicate. In this case, how the native Vietnamese values may have influence on the way Vietnamese people use English when they encounter or when they enter communication with other native speakers of English. It is called intercultural communication. Okay. A stereotype, not quite sure why it's okay. Now in intercultural communication competence, when we add on competence is the ability. So communication competence is the ability to communicate. Intercultural communication competence is the ability to communicate in intercultural context. Sometimes it's referred to as ICC in short. Sometimes it's called intercultural communicative competence. They are exactly the same thing. We can say intercultural communication. We can also call it intercultural communicative competence. Now, in this ability to communicate in intercultural context, it is often divided into two completely different levels of competence. The first one is called intercultural awareness. Intercultural awareness is the lowest level of intercultural communication competence. It refers to the ability of speakers or interlocutors engage in intercultural context to be aware of the fact that cultures can be different. And because of these differences across or between cultures, the way people communicate may be different. So they can become more sensitive toward cultural differences. They may become more aware and accept cultural differences. They can become more observant. So here at this level, it just stops as understanding that culture or awareness that culture can be different. Now, intercultural competence is much higher. It refers to the level or the status where people engaged in intercultural context can be both aware of cultural difference and also can function properly in accordance with their understanding or their awareness. For example, that they know people like Vietnamese people say in their home language, Vietnamese people say, what is the example that we mentioned? Oh, instead of saying, how are you? Sometimes Vietnamese people say, have you eaten yet? Or where are you going? To mean, how are you? But when they use English, they understand that English speakers do not say, where are you going? Or have you eaten yet? To mean hello. So instead of saying, have you eaten yet, or where are you going? They will say, how are you? To greet the other English speaker in intercultural context. This is called intercultural competence. So intercultural competence goes beyond awareness, sympathy, and understanding that cultures are different. It refers to the successful adaptation and integration of that understanding or that awareness into actual communication. And intercultural competence is one of the important competencies that we need to develop for language learners. In later sections, we will see a lot of examples where language learners have very good knowledge of grammar and syntax and morphology and semantics, but they still fail to communicate because they do not have intercultural competence. And we may have the opportunity to explore further into how far and how much and how effective textbooks have developed intercultural competence. And we may also explore the cultural contents delivered or covered in textbook, their value and their limitations. Now, stereotype deserves its host line. Now, stereotype is the oversimplification of especially of the features or characteristics mainly associated with culture or a particular community or group of people. Like we say, Japanese people are hardworking. Well, obviously not all of them are hardworking. Or English people are reserved, not all of them are reserved. The thing is, we cannot not stereotype because people tend to simplify things so that we can make everything simpler and easier to understand. But it's important that when we enter into cultural communication, we will not use or we will not let our stereotypes of other people or of other cultures control our behavior because it's dangerous. So, for example, we cannot think that not all Japanese people, we cannot think that all Japanese people are honest, because a lot of them may not be. And if we believe that, if we let that stereotype of believing all Japanese people are honest, we can put ourselves in danger. But stereotypes are helpful because they can function as hypothesis, as something that we can test for ourselves when we enter into cultural communication context, when we have the opportunity to communicate with people who come from different cultures. We'll try to see if our hypothesis is correct or not. We will not let our hypothesis or stereotype lead or dictate our behavior. Now, when we talk about culture shock and reserve culture shock or display culture shock, I would like you to look at this culture shock, especially something called W-shaped curve. I believe that if you have already learned second language acquisition, you've learned about something called U-shaped curve. It is used to describe the process of teaching language to learners. And the teachers often provides correct input at the beginning, but then for some stages in the middle, the students may fail to pick it up and may fail to use language correctly. And then by providing a lot of practice, the teacher then can have the students communicate fluently, correctly. Now, W-shaped curve is like twice U-shaped curve. It refers to the procedure or the process when we encounter a new culture, feeling so excited, so high at the beginning when we leave our home culture and enter completely new culture. We feel so much overwhelmed and excited, and we look forward to new things, meeting new people, experience completely new culture. But for example, if you get a scholarship to go abroad to do your master or your PhD, let's say you are going to Australia. So when you first leave Vietnam and arrive in Australia, you feel so good, so overwhelmed, so very much on the air, excited. After a few days or a few weeks, you started to miss your family, food at home, the people that you used to talk to, and university assignments are so difficult. You don't know where to go to, who to talk to when you have problems. The food is different from home, and it costs a lot of money to get the food that you like, and you feel shocked. So it's not just, the shock does not just come from the culture, the like Australian culture itself, but it also comes from the workplace, the university culture that you find yourself in. Now, after a few months or even half year or a year, you start to feel comfortable. You know where to go to when you need help or support, where to get the food, who to talk to when you need help. You start feeling comfortable. You get to know more people, make friends with more people, and you become okay. You become so you feel like it's enjoyable to be in Australia. So this is when you feel like you are kind of fully adapted to a new culture. And after 2 or 3 years, your scholarship ends, you finish your education, your whatever degree that you've been pursuing, and you get to go home. Now, when you get home, you experience something called reverse culture shock. Because it takes time to feel like, oh, this is home. Because you've been adapted to Australian culture, the way, the lifestyle, the way that people live, the way that people talk, the way that people behave. You can stay up as late as you want, but at home, things become different. You got to get home by the time that probably your parents expect you to get home, and you miss the food, you miss the atmosphere, you miss the people there, you miss even the food, the environment, the library, the way that the lifestyle that you left behind in Australia. And again, it takes time to get to the situation or to the stage or to the phase where you feel like you are home again. Okay, this is called U-shaped curve. It used to refer to that journey that a person often experience when they have the opportunity to be exposed to a new culture, and then they got to get back to their home culture. And these become key concepts in intercultural communication. And this is why we will actually see and hear a lot of these concepts again and again in this course. Okay, I guess we need to take a break of 15 minutes, and we will back here at 9:15. I'll get some time to finish my dinner, and I'll be back here after 15 minutes. Okay. Hey, I hope you are back here. We just have a few more things to cover for tonight. So before the break, we've looked at some of the key concepts that are often mentioned in intercultural communication and intercultural communication research. You have any questions or any comments or anything that you want to share about these? You are welcome to make those comments. Okay, now, if not, we are going to have a couple of questions, probably just one question, and I'll ask you to, again, provide some example if you can. Here. So in which aspects or in which areas can cultures be different? We kind of came across this in our previous discussion when did we? Oh, yeah, when someone said maybe French architecture is different from Vietnamese architecture. So again, architecture can be an area or can be an aspect. We can find some differences among or between different cultures. What can be some other areas where we can see differences in culture? Just provide some examples if you can. For this activity, we are not going to discuss in group, but I would like you to share your idea straightforward from the top of your head. When you are ready, just say it out loud. Provide some examples where cultures are different or where you think cultures are different. Anyone? Bạn Hồng Diệm. Hồng Diệm.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me make example about the differences culture in the family structures. For example, like in Vietnamese, so the common family structure is nuclear families. So it means the children live with their parents in homes when they was born. So in Korea countries, so in my experience, so I can say that so when children get older and they leave their house, maybe when they get married and they just separate with the big family, so into the small family. So that's for my sharing.
Yeah, okay. So what you are saying is like the size of family can be an area where we look at differences among cultures, right? So in some cultures, not necessarily Vietnamese culture, in some cultures, people tend to live or people tend to prefer nuclear family or extended family over nuclear family. You can see changes because in some culture, in the same culture, like Vietnamese culture, in the past, there used to be more families following extended model when we tend to live with our parents and even our grandparents. But nowadays, a lot of people would prefer or would choose nuclear family if they can. But apparently, we can see more extended families in Vietnam than probably in Australia or in the US or the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What can be some other example? We have someone here, Ngọc Thảo. Instead of sending a direct message to me, can you share some of the ideas that you just jot down here, Thảo? Okay. Thanh Phong, please.
Hello, teacher, and hello, everyone. I would like to share my knowledge about some aspect of the cultural differences. The first thing I want to mention is communication style. For example, in some Europe country or in the US, people like to communicate directly and very clarity. But however, in Vietnamese or Japanese or Chinese, people prefer to indirect communication to become more respectful and politeness communication. And another aspect I want to mention is the value of family structures. Because I think that in some Asian country, people usually respect to the importance of the family or the family roles and the living arrangements. However, in some Europe country or American country, people someone live independently. They raise a child. And another aspect I want to mention is the difference between the educational system. According to some different cultures, I think that in Vietnamese or in Asian country, people tend to study for entering the exam. However, in another country, in European country or in the US, people tend to study to explore the information and explore the knowledge rather than taking the exam. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, now thank you very much, Phong.
Yes.
That you have actually covered a lot in your presentation, in your sharing. Just not just the communication style, but also other aspects too. We'll come back to something that you refer to as direct and indirect when you talk about communication style. But I think it's a very interesting point that you actually pointed out. Thank you very much. Bạn Kiều Diệm, please. Kiều Diệm Thủy, please.
Yes, hello teacher. My name is Cao Kiều Diễm Thúy. Yes, I also would like to talk about the culture in a family. Even in the same family, the old people also have different culture with the young people, because the old people, like our parents, belong to the old generation, and the young people in the family belong to the new generation. So the way the old people, our parents, believe, attitudes, or knowledge also different aspect, different knowledge with the young people in the same family. Yes, that are my opinions.
So is that like generation gap? Is that what you are talking about? Like different generations have different ways of thinking and sharing different balance?
Yes.
Okay,
The
so
gap between the old people and the young people, the same, the different belief, attitudes about the way they educate kids, or the about something about a different perspective about the social norms, something like that.
yeah, it's possible. Yeah, you see that right in your home. Probably your grandparents may look at things slightly differently from the way that you look at things, but it may happen to all cultures, not just in Vietnam culture, or not just in US culture, or not just as in Indian culture. Probably generation gap is something observable across cultures. It may not be associated with cultural difference. So we got to be careful, or maybe I haven't really caught correctly what you are trying to say. But thank you anyway. We will hear now from Tukli, please.
Hello. So I heard the opinions from Ms. Thúy and Mr. Phong, and I quite agree with them in some ways, and I want to add some more. So besides the communication style that Mr. Phong has just mentioned, so I would like to add that some ideas about the bond or the relationship within the people in the community. So I think it's different, depends on depending on what culture we are in. For example, in Vietnam, so we can see that everyone talking about like our neighbors around us, they understand, so they just like the camera, so they know a lot about the story happened in the family around them. And I can see that, yeah, we can see that there may be strong relationship, or that there may be a close bond between the people who live next to each other in the community in our country. However, from the reading I've read about, like in Japan culture, so they live quite separately from each other, and they really respect something like the private space of each other. So they tend to like avoid each other, and maybe when we live in an apartment or a flat, so they may not know who the neighbors are. So they're not really like close relationship between the people in the community like what we have in Vietnam. And another one I want to add is like about let me see, like the social norms or the social values we are in right now. So I can see that on the internet there's a very popular term which refers to like Asian moms, and like about the mothers from Asian countries. So they usually like they want their children to perform the best, like get a 10 point, or they can like punish their children very easily, like with a stick or maybe a flip flop in the hand. And I have a lot of a story about that. However, so comparing to the Western culture or the Western country, so we rarely see that in that story happen in the country. So I think that is related to something like called the face value or the prestige in Asian countries. So they really like they put the prestige a higher value at a higher value than other things. So they want their student to like be the best of all the other students. However, in some Western countries, I think that sometimes they may put like some other values, money, for example, so they may put it at a higher value than the prestige comparing to the Asian country. So that's my idea.
Yeah, it's possible that Asian parents have a lot of expectations on their children. But I guess all parents have expectations on their of their children, not just Asian parents, but probably the way that we express our expectations might be different, and how much we respect our child's wish and their directions and their dreams might be different from parent to parent, and from parents in one culture to parents in another culture. And again, it's stereotyping if we think all Vietnamese mothers or all Vietnamese parents to always have high expectations of their children, why American people or Australian parents or Indian parents may not have expectations of their children that high, because again, people are well, some Vietnamese people may have high expectation, but they still respect the wish and the dreams of their children. So again, it would be an oversimplification if we classified, if we put all Vietnamese parents or all Vietnamese mothers into one same category. But again, it's always good to have that observation. To see maybe parents have different expectations, and those differences may be associated with cultural differences. Thank you. Now I would like to invite one more thí sinh bạn Trân Văn Ngân nè.
Hello, teacher. I'm from cohort 29. My name is Ngân, and I want to add two examples of cultural differences. In terms of social norms, we can see that in terms of personal space, for example, in the United States or in European cultures, people tend to maintain a larger personal space during their conversations. Compared to some Asian countries like in Vietnam, we usually stand closer to other people while we interact with them. And another one is about the gift giving. In our country or in Vietnamese culture, we usually bring some gifts when we meet some of the people. It is customary to bring a gift to those when visiting new people or visiting someone's house. However, gift giving might be less expected in some European countries or in European cultures. That's just some of my examples.
Thank you. Probably we'll hear one more opinion, and then we'll have a roundtable discussion. Bạn Như Ý, please.
So hi, Miss. You hear me clear? Yeah. So what I think, the first thing I think about cultural differences is like the individualism and the collectivism between the two countries or the two regions. So Vietnamese as well as other Asian countries, we tend to use the collectivism is a term for describing that how a person depends on other ideas or other lifestyle to think to conform or to I mean that they tend to live under other ideas and it's very hard for them to like express themselves freely. However, in the US or in some Western country, I mean, people tend to do what they want and they don't care what other people think about them. So I think it's a very clear example about like the difference between the cultures. Yeah. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Ý. Now I would like to look at some of the things that you said. Quite many of you have already pointed out a lot of aspects and areas which you think you can see differences in culture or differences across cultures. I actually noted down here 3 of the things among many things that you mentioned. One of you said probably in some cultures people tend to communicate indirectly, like Vietnamese culture, and in some other cultures, like English-speaking cultures, people tend to be more direct. Let me ask you a question. When you want someone to open the door, and you ask them, "Can you open the door, please?" Is that direct or indirect? Can you open the door, please? Or can you turn the light on, please? Is that direct or indirect? You just say it directly. You don't have to text. You don't have to text me. Just
Yeah,
bằng từ cứng.
I
Yeah.
think it's direct.
Is that direct?
I think this is indirect because we use the question, not a comment for the other, not required directly. So I think this is indirect communication.
Okay, so this is the cứng, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Can you turn the light on, please? Or can you open the door for me? Literally means, it means, do you have the ability to turn the light on? Or do you have the ability to open the door for me? Can is often used to describe ability, like I can swim, I can speak English, I can dance, I can sing. So the modal verb, the can, is often used by native speaker of English to describe the abilities or competencies. I can do it. Like you talk about your ability. So can you turn the light on, or can you please open the door for me? Literally is asking about the ability of the person that we are talking to. Do you have the ability to open the door? Do you have the ability to turn the light on? So on the surface, on language level, it is indirect because because it's actually not asking the listener to open the door or to turn the light on. Literally, it is asking about the ability of the listener. So it is indirect. Okay. So instead of saying open the door or turn the light on, you are asking about the ability of the other person that you are talking to. So if the assumption is if that person has that ability, he or she may turn the light on or may open the door. This is why it is polite. Because in terms of language, you are not giving an order, you are not making a request, you are actually employing a structure to ask about the ability of the person that you are talking to. And because he or she has that ability, he or she may decide to do it for you. So this is called indirect, and it reduces the level of imposition on the person that we are talking to. Okay, so in English, people still use indirect language to be polite. It's not fair if we say that English speakers tend to be direct and Vietnamese people tend to be indirect. However, Vietnamese people and also Korean people and Chinese people and probably Japanese people, the cultures which share Confucian values at some point in their history tend to be oriented toward more indirect communication. It does not mean that native speakers of English are not oriented toward indirect communication. It is just that Vietnamese people or Asian Confucian culture people tend to be more indirect at some point. They are not always indirect. I'll give you some other example when it comes to differences in gift giving, when we are not indirect at all. Now, Vietnamese people, instead of saying, can you open the door or turn the light on, please? Or can you turn the light on, please? They can also say so. But sometimes they say, it's dark in here. Now, it's dark in here can have different meaning. It can be a normal description, observation. It may not be a request. It can just be a very genuine observation. It's dark in here. It's dark in here. So what? If it's dark in here, something can be done to make it lighter. There are many things possible. Can be someone can turn the light on, someone can open the door, can someone open the windows? The windows are already open, the door is already unlocked and left open. Probably there are lights, but nobody has turned it on yet. So probably if the listener wants, he or she can turn the light on. Now, the relationship between the speaker and the listener in this case is not like a person who make requests and the other person has to respond to requests. The relationship between them can be like a normal, very common relationship between the speaker and the listener, because the listener can decide to take it's dark in here as normal observation, not a request. And no one actually will lose face in this case. The listener can also take it as a request. If he or she takes it as a request, then he or she can turn the light on. Okay, so again, harmony can be maintained. So this is much more indirect than can you turn the light on? Because even though can you turn the light on is indirect by asking about the ability of the listener, but at least the doer, you, is mentioned turn the light on. The action is also mentioned. You turn the light on. Okay. Now, which is different from it's dark in here. It's dark in here does not mention who will do it or what should be done. It does not mention the action either. So it's dark in here requires further interpretations on the listener to actually identify the message intended by the speaker. And it also depends a lot on the context. This is why we have high context and low context communication, or high context and low context culture, when communication really depends on contextual factors, on the context, to understand, to correctly arrive at the correct message or the message intended by the speaker. So this is something that we have to point out clearly. Not all cultures are direct or indirect. In some cultures, if not all cultures, sometimes people are more indirect than direct, and sometimes they are more direct than indirect. But in some cultures, people tend to be more indirect than the others. Now, having said that, we'll come to the second example that you pointed out, difference in giving gift or gift giving across cultures. Now, let me give you an example. Now, on your teachers, on the, let's say on the Teacher's Day, you come to visit your former teacher and you give him or her a small gift. Now, what you are doing is you will give a gift. You say, teacher, this is a very small gift that I would like to give you on Teacher's Day. Your teachers often says, no, you don't have to do it. Your presence, you visit me, your presence here is already a present. You don't have to give anything to me. Now, you make the second offer. No, it's nothing. It's something very small. It's nothing compared with what you did for me, with your care and your love and your education. And then maybe on the second or on the third try, your teacher would say, oh, thank you. It's very kind of you. Now, what would happen if after the first time your teacher denies the gift, you say, oh, okay, if you don't like it, I'll take it home. Now the teacher will be shocked. And if you give your teacher the first time the present and the teacher does not really say anything, he or she just takes the gift, you would also feel very unusual. The question is, why both sides, you and your teacher, know already how the game will end? You both still play the game because it's called communication rituals. It's called process-oriented communication in Vietnamese culture, in a lot of cultures, a lot of Asian cultures. When the person who offers the gift of the values or whatever have to impose on the other person to make it easy for that person to accept the gift, to show that you are polite. Okay, the difference in, for example, Western culture, when you give them a gift, teacher, this is a small gift that I would like to give you on Teacher's Day. The teacher would say, wow, it's beautiful. Can I open it? Can I try it all? Okay. So different cultures would have very different orientations towards how people should communicate, how people should behave, the rituals that we have to follow in different contexts. Now, in English-speaking cultures, it is not really polite to impose on the other person, even when what we are doing is considered to be beneficial to that person. This explains why if we say, won't you come in, as an invitation for someone to enter your house, it would be politer than saying, come in. Okay. Now in Vietnamese, if you invite someone, to visit or to come into, to step into your home, you would say, come in, come. It is not considered as polite as will not want you come in English. Because in their culture, it is politer if you make it less imposing, if you deliver a lower level of imposition on the person that you are talking to. Even when what you are talking to, the value that you are offering, the service that you are offering, the gift that you are giving, the offer, whatever it is that you are actually providing, is beneficial to the person that you are talking to. You got to make it like you do not impose on the person that you are talking to. So again, it really depends on specific context and depends on the speech acts that we are making, and it depends on cultures. You also mentioned individualism and collectivism. There are a lot of examples that we can talk about this probably tomorrow night in the next section. And it shows in all aspects of our lives, related to interculture, related to collectivism. It shows in the way that we communicate. It shows in the way that we address ourselves. It shows in the way the other people address us. It shows in the way that we behave in many areas and different phases and stages of communication. And I promise you, tomorrow you'll see them very clearly in quite a number of illustrations. Now, before we finish for tonight, which I think is quite long enough, we'll look at this something called cultural sensitivity. Refers to the process of how a person experience and comes across cultural differences. If they see an aspect which is a cultural aspect which is completely different from their home culture, the first common reaction would be denial, meaning they would say, "Oh, it's different. It's strange. It's I cannot accept it. It's very different. Why Western people wear mini skirt and shorts when they go to holy sacred places like pagodas?" So you deny the differences, and you come back to the stage where you defend your own home culture values. Or Vietnamese people are much politer. They are much more respectful. They wear proper clothes when they go to pagodas. And then it comes to the stage where you start to look at that difference in behaviors and asking yourself, maybe that difference is not that big. Maybe there are some reasons why people wear different things, like Westerners and Vietnamese or Asian people wear things or wear clothing differently when they go to sacred places like pagoda. And then you come to a stage where you start to accept that people in different cultures behave differently. And from that acceptance, you start to develop your sensitivity towards cultural differences. You come to an understanding and awareness that cultures can be different. And so people who come from different cultures maybe behave differently. And finally, and hopefully, ideally, there will be a stage when we'll become like more capable of integrating or successfully adapted to the new culture, behaving like the people who understand, who grow up in that culture. Especially if we learn English as a foreign language, we'll be able to use English to communicate, to function successfully in intercultural contexts. Okay, so it always takes time to go through this whole process, and it also takes time, and also for some people a lot of pain to experience, to many people to suffer from culture shocks, also from stereotyping, before they come to the stage when they can really understand, they can accept, understand, and they can function properly in intercultural context. And it's the task of the teacher to actually help our students to understand these all. And to do that, we got to develop cultural sensitivity ourselves first, and intercultural communication competence for ourselves before we can do anything to facilitate the development of intercultural communication competence for our students. I guess the first section is a bit heavy because it's very much theory-based, and it's also lengthier than I expected. Tomorrow we'll hopefully finish earlier at probably 12:30. And we'll look at more things relevant to intercultural communication. So once again, thank you. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Okay.
Thank you, Miss Nyong. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Miss. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night, Miss.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Miss.